Did you know that you spell the word boujee, B-O-C-A space R-A-T-O-N? No, that's actually how you spell the word Boca Raton, which might be the most bougie city in all of South Florida. And most people think if you live in Boca, your lifestyle is completely different than if you live in Fort Lauderdale. Well, not necessarily true. While Boca is by far one of the most bougie cities, there's actually quite a bit of overlap between living in Fort Lauderdale and living in Boca. So in this video, we're gonna compare the differences and the similarities to living in both cities. And we're gonna talk about everything from the boating, the beaches, the things to do, the city feel, the neighborhoods, schools, parks, and ultimately the real estate, so that by the end of the video, you can decide which city is right for you and your family to live in. And if you're thinking about living in Boca or even living in Fort Lauderdale, my team and I have helped hundreds of families just like you make the move to both cities and ultimately South Florida in general. And we'd love to be your real estate resource of choice. You can call us, email, text us. But now let's jump right into it. Let's talk about what are the similars and what are the differences between living in Boca and Fort Lauderdale. And I think we need to start off with the overall feel. The minute that you step into Boca, you can tell that it's different. From the no billboards to the no car dealerships to even just the overall atmosphere. Boca's definitely a step above a lot of other places here in South Florida. And honestly, that's a huge reason that a lot of people actually love it. Now, when it comes to the hustle and bustle aspect of things, I will say that Boca is a little bit slower and a little bit quieter than some of the surrounding areas, which is kind of surprising when you think about it, because a lot of people from New York actually moved down to Boca, so you think they would bring the hustle and bustle, but not necessarily true. And Boca is really known for its refined luxury and resort style living. Now, on the flip side of things, Fort Lauderdale is definitely a little bit bigger of a city, has a true downtown area. Granted, not like that of a major city like that of New York. However, you still feel like you're in a big city with plenty of high rises, plenty of hustle and bustle, and constant things to do. When compared to that of Boca, which might not have that same thing. However, I will say Fort Lauderdale does exude luxury, but might not be on the same level when it comes to the resort style living. From the overall feel, let's talk about the boating and the beaches. And we'll start off with Boca again, and we'll just keep starting off with Boca. I will say, beach-wise in Boca, it's definitely a lot quieter. Now, it can get kind of packed, but it's nowhere near as commercialized as that of Fort Lauderdale. And some of your best beaches are that of Spanish River Park and Red Reef Park, where it's plenty of beach space. You're nowhere near being like on top of each other like that of Fort Lauderdale. But the kicker is you don't have as much right there if you want to grab a bite to eat, maybe a drink right there on the beach, or go buy a knickknack from a souvenir store. Now, a lot of people actually like that and prefer that. Personally, I kind of like that as well. Now, on the boating side of things, I will say that obviously you have Lake Boca, which is absolutely unreal, especially on the weekends and when they have Boca Bash. Great area to go and hang out. However, if you are looking for something a little bit more quiet, you can head a little bit further north into Lake Wyman, nowhere near as rowdy as Lake Boca can get. On top of that, you also have the inlet right there, so whether you're going to rip it up north and head towards like West Palm and Peanut Island, or head south into Fort Lauderdale, Miami, or straight across and go into Bimini. Now, on the flip side of things, let's talk about Fort Lauderdale. Obviously, Fort Lauderdale beaches are a lot more packed and a lot more commercialized. You have everything from like the Central Beach area, the true Fort Lauderdale beach. Then you get a little bit further north in the Lauderdale by the Sea, Pompano Beach, which can be quieter, or head a little bit further south in the Dania Beach, which is also kind of quiet as well. But overall, just a lot more energy, especially during spring break and the busy season. Now, in terms of boating, I will give the nod to Fort Lauderdale on this one. Technically, it's the yachting capital of the world, with so many inland waterways and canals to go and explore, plus the 17th Street Sandbar. You do have the Port Everglades Inlet right there on the south side, as well as the Lighthouse Point Inlet on the north side. And if you're right there on 17th Street to get up to Lake Boca, it could take you about 20 to 30 minutes, which isn't a bad ride at all. Plus, you're only about maybe a 20 to 30 minute ride south into the Haulover Inlet, or even Miami if you want to do that. And you could rip it straight across to Bimini too. Now let's talk about probably the most important, and that's the food. Now, I will say there's a lot of overlap, so this one's kind of tough to say which one really wins. So Boca is kind of known for some of its Italian food, the Italian spots, and there's some great ones, but there's also some overlap between those in Boca and Fort Lauderdale. Like, for example, there's a Louis Bossi in downtown Fort Lauderdale, and one in downtown Boca, as well as like American Social and 60 Vines as well. However, there are some differences, like Boca does have Trattoria Romana, which is probably my favorite Italian restaurant in Boca. Meanwhile, Fort Lauderdale's got a couple of great options like that of Runway 84, Vitola, and even Heritage. So if Italian's your spot, that's something you can go and try. But there's plenty of great restaurants throughout all of Boca. And I will say it does have a little bit more of an upscale appeal, whether you're going to downtown Boca, Meisner, or even heading out west. Meanwhile, in Fort Lauderdale, there are plenty of great options, and we're actually getting a ton of new options as well. I think there's about 17 new restaurants which have opened recently in the Fort Lauderdale area, which is really good. And a lot of stuff from Miami actually moving up as well. In terms of hole-in-the-wall spots, which I think are a little bit better, the Goat Chicken Kitchen, technically not a hole in the wall, but a nice chain. There's a ton of them throughout Fort Lauderdale. I don't believe there's any in Boca. However, Chipotle is in both, and that's always a great one. But there are great options throughout both. And in Boca, technically, you can head up to Del Rey, go to Death by Pizza, which might be some of the best pizza in all of South Florida. And since we talked about the dining options, obviously we got to talk about the shopping, and I'm giving the nod to Boca on this one, hands down. Whether you're going to a boutique like that in downtown Boca, Meisner, even some of the strip centers out in West Boca. I know a lot of people sleep on West Boca, but it's got a lot of stuff going for it. There's a ton of different options, along with Boca Town Center, which is one of the premier malls in all of South Florida. Meanwhile, in Fort Lauderdale, yes, we have Las Olas and some great boutiques up and down that. Lauderdale by the Sea area as well. I don't personally think it compares to that of Boca. And then the Galleria Mall, it's not even a comparison to Town Center. Yes, we are close to the Aventura Mall as well as Sawgrass, but it's maybe about a 5-minute longer of a drive from Boca to the Sawgrass Mills Mall. Granted, 20-minute longer of a drive to the Aventura Mall. Nightlife wise, it's not even close. Fort Lauderdale easily takes the cake. Now Boca, like we were talking about before, definitely has a slower pace of life. It is a little bit quieter and things do close a whole lot earlier. By about 10 o'clock in Boca, it's pretty dead, not gonna lie to you. Now there are a couple of great bars and different things. Honestly, the go-tos are that of like American Social, maybe even Yard House, both in Meisner Park. But what a lot of people opt to do if you are going out and you're looking for like a late night and you live in Boca is probably head up to Del Rey and go and check out Atlantic Ave. Meanwhile, in Fort Lauderdale, nowhere near as crazy as that of Miami, but it's like a step down. There are some clubs, not really that many, but there is a great bar scene. Whether you're going to the world famous Elbow Room right there on the beach, head right next door to Blondie's, go and play darts or pool. You're looking to go to the wharf right there on the river, or some of the new rooftop bars like that of New Bay on top of the Hilton right there in Fort Lauderdale Beach. There's really a whole lot of different activities and things for pretty much everyone when it comes to nightlife in Fort Lauderdale. Now granted, nightlife's not for everyone, so what about some of these family-friendly activities or maybe even parks for during the day? Now with this one, I will say it's maybe probably pretty even. Now Boca does have some great parks and activities like that at the Gumbo Limbo Nature Center, Sugar Sand Park, obviously Red Reef Park as well, plus plenty of different things to go and do with the kids, whether you're gonna go take them to the movies, maybe bowling, or even take them to go window shopping at the mall. I remember growing up, we used to go and do that. We'd just walk around Town Center. Maybe we were just the weird family. But in Fort Lauderdale, very, very similar. There's tons of great parks like that of George English, Holiday Park. You can head a little bit further out west to Plantation, Pembroke Pines, go to some of those parks, maybe even go to the Sawgrass, go to Sawgrass and Coral Springs and go and walk the trailhead. On top of that, you could go and walk the mall. Galleria, wouldn't really recommend it. But in both, you can also go to the beach and go boating, which is what a lot of families actually opt to do. And speaking of families, obviously we have to talk about the schools, and probably one of the most sought after reasons why people actually want to live in Boca, besides for the feel and everything else that we've been talking about, are the schools. Niche does give the public schools in Boca an A rating, and they do have some excellent schools, whether you're going out to West Boca, Boca High, Spanish River, there's a ton of great options. Meanwhile, in Fort Lauderdale, Niche does give the public schools a B+ rating, and there are some excellent options as well on the public school side. However, what I will say, especially in both cities, what most families opt to do is send their children to private school. Whether you're in Boca and you're sending them to that of like St. Andrews, North Broward, or maybe even heading south into Fort Lauderdale and sending them to Pinecrest. There's also Cardinal Gibbons, St. Thomas, and American Heritage, which has 2 campuses. There's the Del Rey campus as well as a campus in Plantation. There's plenty of different options, and when it comes to sports, some of these schools are probably the most competitive, and some of the best athletes are coming out of them. I mean, think about it. St. Thomas and American Heritage have a ton of guys in the NFL alone. Now, when it comes to finding the perfect area or neighborhood for you, I think the first thing we need to talk about is if you love golf. Now, you're probably wondering, why does that even make a damn difference? Well, in Boca, it pretty much is the way of life. There are some immaculate communities built completely around golf and pretty much just social outings in general. So we do call these membership communities, and kind of one way you might accidentally stumble upon it is if you're on Zillow or Realtor.com and you're looking like, hey, this is a perfect house. It might be like a, for example, 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, single family house, and they're only asking like $425,000 in Boca. You're like, this is a steal. Well, there's a kicker to it because it is a mandatory membership community where you can either take part in the social, golf, or old golf, for example, like that in Broken Sound, and you will pay anywhere from about $150,000 to $200,000 as a one-time capital contribution on top of your annual dues, depending on which one of those you picked. That could range from about $23,000 or $25,000 to upwards of about $30,000 to $31,000 on top of your HOA dues. Now, this is awesome if you love golf because you'll have all the golf in the world that you want to play, be able to network and connect with those of like-minded individuals. But if golf isn't your main thing and that's not important to you, then we have to start looking at some other communities. But while we're still on the topic, what are some of the best country club or membership communities here in the Boca area? Obviously Broken Sound, Boca West, St. Andrews, Boca Point, just to name a few. And if you want a full list of them, shoot me an email. I got you guys. I'll send you the entire list of some of the best membership communities in all of Boca. From there, neighborhood wise, it really just depends on Boca if you want to live in East Boca or West Boca. And technically, depending on East and West, some people have different definitions of it. We're defining East and West Boca as 95 as our cutoff point. So everything east of 95 will be considered East Boca. Everything west of 95 will be considered West Boca. So everything in West Boca is more gated communities, country club communities like we were talking about. And there's also a lot of new construction communities like that of Lotus Edge, which is being built, and some of those homes are absolutely ridiculous. Now, if you're looking for a resale home, it was built recently as well. There's also Boca Bridges out west, but there's everything and anything in between, along with plenty of 55 plus communities. And you're thinking, hey, I don't want to move into a retirement community, Joe. I'm like 56, 57. I'm not anywhere near ready to retire and just play freaking shuffleboard. No, some of these 55 plus communities, I want them to adopt me or let me in there because they're like resorts. They have everything that you can imagine. Now, some of them are condos, but then they go upwards from there to some of these sprawling estates with pretty much every amenity under the sun, whether you're going to the gym, pool, pickleball, and even community events. Now, further out east, it's a little bit different. Nowhere near as many gated communities, but we do have a couple like that of the Royal Palm Country Club or Yacht and Country Club, which is amazing. And there's plenty of other communities that are non-HOA communities where you can get a home on the water, live around the Meisner Park area as well, all highly sought after for both the schools, the water, and the accessibility to the beach. Now, on the Fort Lauderdale side of things, pretty much all of Fort Lauderdale is east of 95, and we don't have a whole lot of HOA communities. Now, we do have some like that of Sea Ranch Lakes, which is awesome, especially if you love the beach, because they do have their own private beach club right there. There's also the Bal Harbor area, Harbor Island. But if you're looking for something where you can be on the water, maybe not have to pay an HOA, Coral Ridge is great. You also have Las Olas Isles, Rio Vista, which is personally one of my favorites. If I could pick, I'd live on the water in Rio Vista. I just like the walkability and the access to downtown. Now, if you don't want to live on the water, there's also some great communities like that of Victoria Park. You can live on the golf course side of Coral Ridge, and some of our up and coming neighborhoods like that of Riverside Park, Tarpon River, and even Sailboat Bend. And I know we talked about a little bit of new construction, especially in Boca with some of the new construction single family homes, but one place I think we really do differ between the two is new construction luxury condos. Now, there's only one project coming to the Boca area, and that is Glass House Boca, which will be in the downtown Boca area, and it will be starting at $2.6 million. Meanwhile, in Fort Lauderdale, we are absolutely booming when it comes to new construction luxury condos. We have, I believe, a little over 21 projects in the pipeline, might be close to 30 by this time the video is actually posted, but there's something really for everyone, and that's the greater Fort Lauderdale area, including Fort Lauderdale all the way up to Pompano. So some examples of that are like obviously the Pier 66 residences. We have Celine right there on the beach, Andare right there on Las Olas, Sixth and Rio right there near downtown as well. Then we get into Flagler Village, and that is absolutely booming with freaking amazing projects like that of Umbel. You have the Viceroy residences, Nativo, which will be short-term rentals in the downtown area. Then we get into Pompano, which has some crazy projects like the Ritz-Carlton residences, which sold out in 6 months. We have the W residences, Salado, the Armani residences, the Envy residences, which actually start under $400,000. And then the world's first standalone Waldorf Astoria residences are actually coming to Pompano Beach. So as you can see, Pompano and Fort Lauderdale are booming with new construction luxury condos. So if that's more your vibe, Fort Lauderdale might be the area for you. If you're looking for a resale condo or single family home, brand new, Boca might be a little bit better of a spot for you. Now when it comes to the overall real estate market in both, especially on the resale side of things, we'll start off with Boca. So the average sales price right now for single family home in Boca is right around $1.5 million. And with that, we're sitting at about 7 months of inventory, and it takes about 70 days on average for that same single family house to sell. Now, on the flip side of things, for condos and townhomes, our average sales price is right around $600,000, but we have almost 12 months of inventory. So by far a buyer's market when it comes to the months of inventory for condos and townhomes, kind of equilibrium for single family, and it's taken about 80 days on average for those condos and townhomes to sell in Boca. Now let's compare that to Fort Lauderdale, where I found this kind of shocking, but single family average price point in Fort Lauderdale is almost exactly the same as that of Boca, right at $1.5 million. However, where we start to differ is the months of supply. We're at 10 months of supply, definitely a buyer's market when it comes to single family homes in Fort Lauderdale, and about 80 days to sell. Meanwhile, on the condos and townhome side, almost identical to Boca, which is kind of shocking. I ran it a couple different times and like, there's no freaking way. But about $600,000 for our average price point, about 16 months of supply, so even more so of a buyer's market. And most of that's because of all those condos on the beach, especially in the Gulf Mile area. And it's taken about 90 days on average for some of these condos and townhomes to sell. So when you're trying to compare apples to apples, especially in terms of the real estate prices, they are relatively similar, but it is taking homes in Fort Lauderdale a little bit longer to sell. Definitely more so of a buyer's market compared to that of Boca, where it's still a little bit of a seller's market, at least on single family. Condos and townhomes across the board is just an absolute cluster, but you kind of have an idea of how to compare it. So really all it comes down to is the lifestyle and which is better for you and your family. So let me know in the comments down below. Would you rather live in Boca or would you rather live in Fort Lauderdale? And if you or anyone you know are looking to move to Boca, Fort Lauderdale, or anywhere here in South Florida, my team and I would love to be your real estate resource of choice. You can call us, email, text us, whatever's easiest for you, we got you.